The Vorin Dominion had fallen. Their fleets shattered, their homeworld in ruins, their emperor executed by human hands. What should have been an easy conquest had turned into a massacre, only this time it was the conquerors who were slaughtered. Humanity had not just fought back. They had annihilated an empire that had ruled the stars for centuries. But war does not end with victory. The fall of the Dominion left a power vacuum, and the galaxy was watching. Some species cheered, their shackles finally broken. Others looked upon humanity with terror, realizing they had just witnessed the birth of a new apex predator. Earth's military command knew the war was won, but the fight was far from over. Admiral Selwyn stood aboard the UES Retribution, her flagship, overlooking the ruined remains of the Vorin homeworld. Fires raged across the planet's surface, vast cityscapes reduced to rubble. Once the seat of power for an empire that had ruled through fear, it now lay silent. "Reports are coming in from across Dominion space, Admiral," Commander Sato said, handing her a datapad. "Uprisings are spreading like wildfire. The Vorin military is collapsing. Every sector we strike falls within days. Their own slaves are tearing them apart." Selwyn nodded, her sharp gaze fixed on the smoldering remains below. "Good. But it's not enough. We need to finish this." Sato frowned. "Ma'am, with respect, we have finished it. The Dominion is done." Selwyn turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "The Dominion is finished, but the Vorins still exist." She gestured at the datapad. "What's left of their fleets is retreating into the unknown regions. Warlords will rise, factions will form. If we allow them time to regroup, they'll come back." A cold silence filled the command deck. "What are you suggesting?" Sato finally asked. Selwyn turned back to the viewport, watching the burning world below. "We don't just break them. We hunt them. Every last fleet, every last stronghold, until the Vorin are nothing but a memory." She activated the fleet-wide communications channel. "To all ships of the United Earth military, the war is not over. The Dominion is broken, but its remnants remain. We will not give them time to recover. Effective immediately, we are launching Operation Extermination. Our mission is simple: eradicate what remains of the Vorin species. Wipe them from the stars. No sanctuary, no escape, no mercy." Across the fleet, thousands of human soldiers and officers heard the order, and not a single one hesitated. Despite the devastating losses, some of the Vorin had survived. Scattered warlords, rogue admirals, and broken remnants of their once mighty empire had fled into deep space, trying to regroup. But they weren't just running, they were desperate. A fleet of 10 Vorin warships, led by the brutal warlord Zareth, had taken refuge on a desolate moon in the Oryx system. Zareth was no fool. He knew the Dominion was dead, but he also knew humans were not conquerors. They didn't take planets. They didn't build empires. They destroyed them. So Zareth made a choice. He would not wait for the humans to come for him. He would strike first. His fleet jumped into Sol space, appearing on the edge of the solar system. Their target? Earth itself. The United Earth military detected them within seconds. Human fleets scrambled, warships mobilized. Admiral Selwyn received the report and simply smirked. "They really are stupid," she muttered. The Vorin Revenge Fleet, as they called themselves, never reached Earth. Before they could even breach the inner system, they were met by humanity's new weapon, stolen Dominion technology, improved with human engineering. The Aegis Revenant, a newly built warship incorporating Dominion plasma cannons with human railgun artillery, led the charge. In less than 20 minutes, half the Vorin fleet was obliterated. By the time the battle ended, not a single Vorin ship remained intact. The Aegis Revenant, a newly built warship incorporating Dominion plasma cannons with human railgun artillery, led the charge. In less than 20 minutes, half the Vorin fleet was obliterated. The battle was over before it had truly begun. The Vorin had launched their desperate assault with outdated strategies, still clinging to the belief that their sheer numbers and past dominance would be enough. They were wrong. Human forces had adapted, learned, and surpassed every expectation the galaxy had once placed upon them. The Aegis Revenant, the pinnacle of this evolution, moved like a predator through the battlefield, unleashing destruction with pinpoint accuracy. Explosions bloomed in the dark void, the remnants of Vorin warships reduced to floating wreckage. Those who tried to flee were systematically hunted down, their escape trajectories calculated and countered by Earth's defense network. Human interceptor squadrons swarmed over the battlefield, eradicating the last vestiges of resistance. By the time the battle ended, not a single Vorin ship remained intact. Their final attempt to strike at the heart of humanity had not only failed, but had cemented their fate. On the bridge of the Aegis Revenant, Captain Elias Ward stood with arms crossed, his face illuminated by the glow of the holographic tactical display. The battlefield was a graveyard now, debris drifting in cold silence. His officers moved about efficiently, securing the final reports, scanning for survivors. But they all knew there would be none. "They actually thought they could take Earth," Ward muttered, shaking his head. Lieutenant Mira Holt let out a dry chuckle from her station. "Desperation makes you stupid." Commander Doran Kane, freshly promoted after his brutal resistance on Velos 3, leaned against the command console. "Desperation doesn't even begin to cover it. This was suicide." "They knew they had no chance, but they came anyway," Ward said. "That tells me one thing." Kane met his gaze. "They're cornered." Ward nodded. "Exactly. The Vorin know they've lost. Their empire is crumbling. This was a last-ditch attempt at revenge, nothing more. They weren't trying to win. They just wanted to hurt us before they died." Holt turned in her chair. "And now?" Ward's expression hardened. "Now, we make sure there's nothing left of them to come back." Across the fleet, similar thoughts were forming. Humanity had never sought this war, but now that it was upon them, they would not leave it unfinished. The Vorin had once ruled through terror, enslaving entire civilizations under the weight of their military might. But their empire had been built on the belief that they were unchallengeable. That belief had been shattered. Reports streamed in from across Dominion space, rebellions igniting on occupied worlds, former slave species rising up against their oppressors. The Vorin were being torn apart from within, just as much as they were being dismantled by human fleets. Admiral Selwyn's orders had been clear. No peace, no negotiations, no survivors. A cold silence filled the bridge as Ward watched the last pieces of Vorin wreckage drift aimlessly in the void. "This isn't over," Kane said, breaking the quiet. Ward exhaled, his fingers tightening around the edge of the console. "No, it's not. But we're about to make damn sure it will be." Far from Earth, in the shattered remains of the Dominion's once glorious core systems, the last remnants of the Vorin leadership had gathered in a desperate bid for survival. Their fleets had been reduced to a fraction of their former strength. Their worlds, once symbols of their eternal rule, had fallen into chaos. The High Council was gone, assassinated, killed in battle, or missing. Now, only warlords remained, each scrambling for whatever power they could still grasp. In the heart of a ruined command center on Vorin Prime, the last great bastion of their empire, Warlord Zaylor stood before a massive war table, staring at the grim reality of their situation. "This should not be happening," he snarled, his mandibles clicking in frustration. Across from him, a battered Vorin fleet commander shook his head. "It is happening, and it's worse than we thought. The humans aren't just fighting us, they're exterminating us." Zaylor bared his fangs. "We were the greatest empire this galaxy has ever known." He slammed his fist against the table, the impact sending cracks through the holographic display. "How could this have happened?" The humans do not fight like others, another officer said grimly. They do not take territory. They do not enslave. They kill, they destroy, and they move on. We ruled through fear, but now they are the ones we fear. A heavy silence filled the chamber. Zalor clenched his fists. His once glorious dominion, built over centuries of conquest, was falling apart within mere months. His people were fleeing like prey. The humans had changed the rules of war, and now the predators had become the hunted. But he refused to let it end like this. Then we do what we must, Zalor said, his voice steel. If the humans wish to hunt us, we will show them what it means to fight a cornered beast. He gestured to the fleet display. There are still strongholds, hidden bases, weapon caches. We will not kneel. We will regroup. And we will remind the galaxy why the Vorin were feared. The last warlords exchanged glances, some nodding hesitantly. They knew the truth. The Dominion was finished. But if they were to die, they would die making the humans bleed. The battle wasn't over yet. And humanity wasn't done hunting them. The ruins of the Vorin Dominion were still smoldering, but humanity was not done. The war had been fought, but the hunt had only just begun. The surviving Vorin warlords had scattered across the outer systems, attempting to regroup, to rebuild. They were desperate, clinging to the last vestiges of their once mighty empire. But humanity had learned one thing from this war: never leave an enemy alive. Captain Elias Ward stood aboard the Aegis Revenant, overlooking the data feeds from reconnaissance teams spread across the remnants of Dominion space. The Vorin had lost everything, yet they still fought. Their warlords had turned into insurgents, striking in hit-and-run raids, sabotaging supply routes, and ambushing human patrols. "They won't stop," Lieutenant Mira Holt muttered beside him. "They don't know how to surrender." Ward didn't take his eyes off the data feed. "That's why we're not giving them a choice." The humans had turned their entire military doctrine into one purpose: extermination. No longer a defensive war, this was a galaxy-wide purge. Every shipyard the Vorin still operated was destroyed. Every hidden outpost they retreated to was razed. Every last warlord that tried to reclaim power was hunted down. Reports of the new campaign spread quickly. The Aegis Revenant had led 3 separate assaults against surviving Vorin forces, each one a decisive and ruthless victory. Human warships, now equipped with reverse-engineered Dominion technology, cut through their fleets with terrifying efficiency. No survivors, no prisoners. And yet, despite everything, the Vorin refused to die quietly. Deep in the shattered remnants of the Dominion's last stronghold, Warlord Zalor paced through the war room, his mandibles clicking in agitation. His forces had dwindled to a fraction of their original strength. Only a handful of ships remained. His supply lines were gone. The galaxy, once under his people's rule, now turned away in fear. The slaves they had once commanded now hunted their former masters. "We cannot fight like this," one of his officers said. "The humans destroy everything they touch. Their fleets move faster than we can retreat. Every system we jump to, they are already there." Zalor bared his fangs. "So what do you suggest? We kneel, beg for our lives?" The officer hesitated. We could negotiate." Zalor laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "Negotiate? With them? They do not take prisoners. They do not leave survivors. The humans have no interest in ruling. They want us dead." Silence fell over the remaining warlords. "They will never stop," Zalor continued. "And because of that, neither will we. If we are to die, then we take as many of them with us as we can." One of his sub-commanders spoke up. "There is still one option, something the humans are not prepared for." Zalor narrowed his eyes. "Speak." The commander hesitated before activating a holographic display. A complex, unreadable alien script ran across the screen. Zalor stared at it. His mandibles twitched. This This is a death sentence. The commander nodded. So is doing nothing. Zalor exhaled slowly. He had never imagined it would come to this. The humans had backed them into a corner so completely that there was only one path left, an action so extreme, so devastating that even the Dominion at its height had never considered it. His claws tightened into fists. Then let us give the humans something they will never forget. On board the Aegis Revenant, alarms blared through the command deck. Admiral Selwyn is on the line, Holt reported. Ward turned to the main holo display as the Admiral's face appeared, her usual cold expression even more severe. We've intercepted a Dominion transmission, she said without preamble. The last remnants of their fleet have disappeared. Ward frowned. Disappeared? Selwyn nodded. Their ships are no longer appearing on our scans. No distress signals, no movement, nothing. It's as if they've vanished into deep space. Ward exchanged glances with Kane and Holt. That's impossible. They're desperate, but they wouldn't just run. Selwyn's expression darkened. Which is why we believe they are planning something far worse. She gestured off-screen, and new data feeds filled the holo display. Readings from deep space reconnaissance probes, strange energy signatures, and fragmented transmissions from abandoned Vorin outposts. Holt narrowed her eyes at the readings. This isn't standard Dominion tech. These power signatures, they don't match anything we've seen before. That's because it's not their technology, Selwyn said grimly. It's something older. A silence fell over the bridge. Ward clenched his jaw. What the hell are they doing? We don't know, Selwyn admitted. But whatever it is, we're not waiting to find out. We're mobilizing the entire fleet. Every ship, every soldier. We're hunting them down before they can use whatever they've found. Ward straightened. Coordinates? Selwyn sent the data directly to his console. They've hidden themselves in the abyssal rift. That region is a navigational nightmare. Unstable gravity wells, collapsed stars, black holes. No fleet has ever entered and returned. Kane let out a low whistle. And yet that's exactly where they've run to. That's not coincidence. Ward nodded grimly. They found something. Selwyn's eyes were sharp. Then we're going to take it from them. The abyssal rift was unlike anything Ward had ever seen. The Aegis Revenant emerged from hyperspace, its hull groaning as the gravitational forces pulled at its frame. The rift was a graveyard of shattered planets, remnants of cosmic destruction scattered across an empty void. Stars flickered dimly, their light struggling against the abyss, and there, at the heart of it, the last Vorin fleet waited. But something was wrong. They're not moving, Holt whispered. Ward frowned. Zoom in. The display enhanced, revealing a horrifying sight. Vorin warships, massive in size, floating lifelessly in the dark, their hulls cracked open, power signatures fluctuating erratically. Some ships had been ripped apart from the inside. This doesn't make sense, Kane muttered. Who attacked them? Then the sensors screamed. A massive energy spike erupted from deep within the rift. A distortion in space itself. Something waking up. Ward felt a chill crawl up his spine. What the hell did they find? And then the rift answered. The darkness moved. Something ancient and hungry rose from the abyss, vast beyond comprehension. A construct? A being? A force of nature itself? No one knew, but it had awakened, and it was not pleased. Vorin warships, already crippled, were pulled into the void, vanishing in an instant as tendrils of energy lashed out from the abyss. The last warlords screamed into their comms, their ships shredded apart before they could even run. And then it turned toward the human fleet. Ward barely had time to react. All ships, evasive maneuvers, now! The Aegis Revenant lurched as gravitational distortions ripped through space, pulling vessels into unnatural trajectories. Energy flares erupted in the void, consuming smaller ships in an instant. Holt gritted her teeth, fingers flying across her console. "We need to jump, now!" "Not yet!" Ward shouted. "We need data! We need to know what this is!" Selwyn's voice cut through the chaos. "Ward, pull back now! Whatever the Vorin found, it's not something we can fight!" For the first time since the war began, Ward felt something unfamiliar. Fear. "All ships, retreat!" As the fleet jumped away, the last thing they saw was the rift collapsing in on itself, the darkness swallowing what remained of the Vorin. The Dominion was gone. But humanity had awakened something worse, and the war was far from over.